The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. Admiral Victor Holt understood this the moment he stepped through the towering gates. The Galactic Council headquarters stretched upward for nearly a kilometer, a cathedral of polished obsidian and floating crystal platforms where representatives from over 800 species sat in judgment. Bioluminescent creatures cast shifting shadows across the walls. Beings of pure energy hummed in frequencies that made his teeth ache. Massive insectoid delegates clicked their mandibles in what might have been anticipation or hunger. And in the center of it all, standing on a platform barely 3 meters wide, stood humanity's entire delegation. 5 humans. 5 representatives of a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel only 42 years ago. 5 accused criminals facing the wrath of a galaxy. High Arbiter Velos. A being whose crystalline body had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, raised 6 arms for silence. The chamber fell quiet, with a weight that pressed against Holt's chest. Admiral Victor Holt of Earth. The Arbiter's voice resonated through translation devices across the chamber. You stand accused of crimes that have no precedent in galactic history. Your species has been part of the Accord for less than half a century. In that time, you have violated 17 treaties, destroyed 112 vessels belonging to member species, and committed what can only be described as genocide. A ripple of hatred passed through the assembly. Species that had never agreed on anything united in their fury against the humans standing before them. You have annihilated the Vraxian collective. 3 billion sentient beings, Admiral. Your species has murdered 3 billion sentient beings. Holt did not flinch. His gray eyes, weathered by decades of military service, scanned the assembly with the calm assessment of a man who had made peace with death long ago. How do you answer these charges? The Admiral stepped forward. His voice carried across the massive chamber with a clarity that surprised many of the delegates. Humans were small, fragile, short-lived creatures from a world so hostile that most species considered it uninhabitable. They were not supposed to have voices that commanded attention. Permission to present evidence before judgment is rendered. The Arbiter's crystalline form flickered with irritation. You may present your defense. Holt reached into his uniform and produced a small device. Holographic projectors throughout the chamber activated, and suddenly the assembly was surrounded by darkness and stars. A sound filled the void. A transmission. A voice. It was small. It was terrified. It was the voice of a child. Please. Anyone. They are taking us from our homes. They put us in dark rooms. They say they want to see how long we can scream before we stop. My mother tried to fight them, and they... The transmission cut out with a burst of static. Another began. An adult male, speaking in a language the translators rendered as Korvathi. They are experimenting on us. They cut us open while we are awake. They say they need to understand how our bodies process pain. They say they have centuries to learn everything about us. And another. And another. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. Species from across the Accord, united not in judgment, but in agony, begging for help that never came. Admiral Holt let the transmissions play for 2 full minutes. Delegates who had been ready to condemn humanity now sat in uncomfortable silence. Several Korvathi representatives had gone pale, their armored bodies trembling. For 47 years, Holt said quietly, the Vraxian collective operated what they called Research Station Prime, hidden in the uncharted regions beyond Accord space. They abducted citizens from 63 member species. They performed experiments designed to catalog every possible form of suffering. He turned slowly, meeting eyes across the chamber. And for 47 years, this council knew. The silence became absolute. You classified the distress signals. You buried the missing persons reports. You calculated that confronting the Vraxians would destabilize trade routes and political alliances. You decided that some lives were worth less than economic convenience. A Korvathi delegate rose. This is a lie. Our government would never. Holt pressed another button on his device. Documents filled the air. Communications between Vraxian leadership and officials from 22 Accord member species. Trade agreements. Research partnerships. Diplomatic immunity in exchange for scientific data. Your government sold your own citizens to the Vraxians, Holt said flatly. They received detailed reports on Korvathi pain thresholds in exchange for exclusive mining rights in the Outer Territories. 1,700 of your people died in those laboratories. Your leaders knew. They profited. The Korvathi delegate sat down. His body had stopped trembling. He was simply still, processing a truth that destroyed everything he believed about his civilization. 3 months ago, Holt continued, a human cargo vessel picked up one of those distress signals. The ship's captain was a woman named Elena Vasquez. She was transporting agricultural equipment to a colony world. She had no military training, no combat experience, no weapons beyond a standard emergency kit. The holographic display shifted to show a small cargo vessel, battered and scarred, hanging in space near a massive station bristling with weapons. Captain Vasquez did not contact the Accord. She did not file a report with the proper authorities. She did not wait for permission. Holt's voice hardened. She sent a message to Earth. 1 sentence. She said, "They are hurting children in here." 6 hours later, every human military vessel in the galaxy changed course. 31 ships. Our entire defense fleet. Against an empire that commanded over 1,500 warships. The Arbiter leaned forward. You went to war without authorization, without consultation, without any attempt at diplomatic resolution. Yes, why? Admiral Holt looked up at the crystalline being with an expression that several delegates would later describe as terrifying. Because we heard children screaming, Arbiter. And humans do not negotiate with people who torture children. We do not file complaints. We do not wait for committees to deliberate. We come, and we make it stop, even if it means destroying an entire civilization. The Vraxians had 47 years to stop. They had 47 years of warnings and protests and diplomatic notes. They responded by expanding their operations. They built more stations. They took more victims. They refined their techniques. Holt's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried through the silent chamber like thunder. We gave them one warning. Surrender the prisoners. Face justice. They laughed. They said the Accord would protect them. They said no primitive Deathworld species would dare challenge their power. He paused. They were wrong. The holographic display changed again. It showed the burning wreckage of Vraxian warships scattered across a star system. It showed human vessels, many of them damaged beyond repair, pressing forward through walls of fire. It showed soldiers in armored suits breaching station hulls and carrying broken, traumatized prisoners to safety. We lost 19 ships. 8,000 humans died in that campaign. But we freed 412 survivors from 63 species. We recovered records documenting decades of atrocities. And we made certain that the Vraxians would never hurt anyone again. Admiral Holt turned back to face the full council. You call it genocide. We call it justice. You say we violated treaties. We say those treaties protected monsters. You claim we acted without authorization. We claim that authorization was never going to come because too many of you were complicit in the crimes we stopped. He stood straight, a single human facing the judgment of a galaxy. So yes, High Arbiter, we destroyed the Vraxian collective. We would do it again. And if there are other species out there running torture laboratories while this council looks the other way, we will find them too. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates screamed for human blood. Others sat in stunned silence, processing the evidence of their own government's complicity. A few representatives of species who had lost citizens to the Vraxians looked at the human admiral with something that might have been gratitude. High Arbiter Velos raised all 6 arms, demanding order. The noise gradually subsided. "Admiral Holt," the ancient being said slowly, "you have made serious accusations against this council and its member species. You have admitted to acts of war that violate every principle of civilized governance. You have shown no remorse for the deaths of 3 billion sentient beings." "The Vraxians were not sentient in any way that matters," Holt replied. "Sentient beings do not build factories designed to maximize suffering. They had the knowledge and capability of a civilized species, but they used it to become monsters. We simply treated them as what they were. That is not your judgment to make. Someone had to make it. This council refused. So we did." The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the crystalline being turned to address the full assembly. "This council will recess for deliberation. We will determine whether humanity has committed crimes against galactic civilization, or whether—" The Arbiter paused, as if the next words were difficult to form. "Or whether humanity has revealed crimes that this council itself must answer for." Admiral Holt remained standing as delegates began to file out. Many refused to look at him. Others stared with open hatred. But here and there, scattered through the massive chamber, representatives of species who had lost their own people to the Vraxians met his eyes. They did not speak. They did not need to. Somewhere in the back of the chamber, a Korvathi warrior who had lost his daughter to Vraxian abductors 20 years ago made a decision. He rose from his seat and walked toward the human delegation. "Admiral Holt." Holt turned. "Yes, my daughter?" "Her name was Kira. She was taken when she was 12 years old. I was told she died in a transport accident. I was told to forget." The Admiral nodded slowly. "I am sorry for your loss. Do not be sorry." The warrior's voice cracked with emotion. "Be proud. You did what my people should have done. You did what I should have done." He reached out and grasped Holt's hand in a grip that would have crushed the bones of most species. Holt did not flinch. "Whatever this council decides," the warrior said, "know that you have earned the gratitude of every parent who lost a child to those monsters. Know that there are those among us who understand why you did what you did. I did not do it for gratitude. I know. That is why it matters." The warrior released his grip and walked away. Admiral Holt watched him go, then turned to his delegation. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, "we did the right thing." None of them disagreed, and somewhere in the chamber, hidden among the departing delegates, representatives of a dozen species began to whisper among themselves. The evidence of Vraxian atrocities was damning. The evidence of Accord complicity was worse. The galaxy was about to change, one way or another. Humanity had seen to that. 18 months before the trial, the cargo vessel Horizon drifted through a region of space so empty that navigation charts simply labeled it Void. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair, reviewing supply manifests for the colony delivery scheduled in 3 days. It was boring work, the kind of routine that made long-haul cargo runs feel like slow suffocation. She had been doing this for 12 years. She knew every system on her ship, every quirk of the aging engines, every sound that meant trouble. A sound coming from her communications console was trouble. Captain. Her communications officer, a young man named David Okoy, pulled off his headphones with a frown. "I have something strange." "Define strange?" "A signal, very faint, coming from coordinates that should be completely empty." He checked his instruments twice. According to every chart we have, there is nothing out there. No stations, no ships, no planets. Vasquez moved to his station. Let me hear it. The sound that filled the bridge was unmistakable to anyone who had spent time in space. 3 short pulses. 3 long. 3 short. The universal distress pattern, agreed upon by every spacefaring species since the formation of the Galactic Accord. But beneath the pattern was something else. A voice, small, broken, speaking in a language the ship's translator identified as Silvari. My name is Bright Sky. I am 9 years old. I do not remember how long I have been here. Please, someone please come. They hurt us every day. Please. The bridge crew froze. Vasquez had heard distress signals before. Equipment failures. Navigation errors. Medical emergencies. This was different. This was a child calling from somewhere that should not exist. David, can you get a fix on that signal? Already working on it, Captain. The source is approximately 14 hours away at maximum speed. But there is something else. He pulled up sensor data on the main display. I am detecting a gravitational anomaly at those coordinates. Something massive is hidden behind some kind of technological cloak. How massive? Station-sized. Maybe larger. Vasquez considered her options. Accord protocols were clear on situations like this. Any anomaly of this magnitude required a report to the Galactic Survey Authority. Ships did not investigate alone. Ships did not risk themselves for signals that might be traps. The child's voice continued in the background, a loop playing over and over. They hurt us every day. Please. How many crew do we have? Vasquez asked. 18 total. 4 with any combat training. Weapons? Standard emergency kit. Enough to deal with pirates, maybe. Nothing that could take on a station. Her first officer, a woman named Rachel Torres, stepped forward. Captain, you are not actually considering ... I am considering everything, Rachel, including the possibility that there is a 9-year-old child out there who has been calling for help while everyone flies past. It could be a trap. The Vraxians are known for creative ambush tactics. Then we will be careful. Elena. Torres rarely used her first name. We are a cargo ship. We are carrying agricultural equipment to a colony that is depending on us. We have families waiting at home. This is not our job. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the faces of her crew, people who had trusted her for years, people who had every right to expect her to make rational decisions. Then she thought about her daughter, 8 years old, waiting on Earth for her mother to come home. If her daughter was the one calling from that void, would she want passing ships to file reports with proper authorities? David, she said finally, open a channel to Earth. Priority 1. Route it through every relay we can reach. Captain, I am not going in alone, but I am also not leaving without knowing what is out there. Send everything we have. The signal, the sensor data, the coordinates. Send it to anyone who will listen. David hesitated only a moment before complying. Message away, Captain. But at this distance, it will take hours to reach Earth, and even longer for any response to get back. Then we will use those hours to get closer and gather more information. Vasquez returned to her command chair. Helm, adjust course to approach the anomaly. Keep us at the edge of sensor range. I want to know everything about that place before we make any decisions. The horizon changed course. For the next 12 hours, they crept toward the hidden station. Sensor data slowly filled in the picture of what they were approaching. The cloak was sophisticated, far beyond anything humans had developed, but it was not perfect. Through careful observation, they pieced together the shape of something massive. The station was enormous. Easily 3 kilometers long, with multiple docking bays and what appeared to be hundreds of separate compartments. Power readings suggested a population in the thousands. And the distress signal was not a lone . As they got closer, other voices emerged from the static. Adults, children, species from across the Accord. All of them calling for help. All of them describing the same thing. Pain, experiments, suffering that had no end. Captain. David's voice was shaking. I have isolated individual transmissions. There are at least 400 distinct voices. Species from across the galaxy. Korvathi, Salvari, Minari, and... He paused. Human. There are human voices in there. Vasquez felt her blood turn cold. What are they saying? One of them identifies herself as Dr. Maria Santos. She says she was taken from the colony ship Dawn's Promise 11 years ago. The Dawn's Promise. Vasquez remembered that name. 2,000 colonists vanished without explanation during humanity's early years of space travel. The official report blamed a reactor malfunction. The official report was a lie. They are cataloging us, David continued. Every species, every weakness, every way to cause pain. Dr. Santos says the Vraxians have been doing this for decades. She says they are planning something. She does not know what. Torres moved to stand beside Vasquez. Elena, we need to leave. This is bigger than us. This is bigger than anything we can handle. I know. Then let us go. Let us get the information back to Earth, and let someone with actual weapons deal with this. And in the time it takes to do that, how many more people will die in there? Before Torres could respond, the sensors screamed an alert. Contact! David shouted. Vraxian vessel decloaking off our starboard side. They have weapons locked. On the main display, a warship materialized from nothing. It was sleek, predatory, bristling with weapons that made the Horizon's emergency kit look like toys. They have seen us, Torres breathed. Vasquez made her decision in an instant. Full power to engines. Head directly for the station. What? They want us alive, Rachel. They want more test subjects. That means they will not destroy us until they have to. And I want to be as close to that station as possible when they catch up. Why? Vasquez looked at her cargo manifest. 4,000 tons of industrial mining explosives, intended for asteroid clearing operations at the colony. Enough to level a small mountain, or punch a hole in a station wall. Because I am going to make sure they cannot keep those people locked up anymore. One way or another. The Horizon raced toward the hidden station. A cargo ship against a warship. A crew of 18 against an empire of horrors. Behind them, the Vraxian vessel gave chase. Confident in its overwhelming superiority, they caught up just as the Horizon reached the station's outer perimeter. Attention! Human vessel. The Vraxian commander's voice was cold, clinical. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the deaths of your crew. Compliance will be rewarded with a chance to serve the advancement of science. Vasquez did not respond. Instead, she opened a channel to her cargo bay. Marcus, are those charges ready? Her cargo master's voice came back grim but steady. Ready as they will ever be, Captain. But you know this is crazy, right? Noted. Stand by. She turned to Torres. Rachel, I need you to take the shuttle. Get as far away from here as you can. Make sure our transmission reaches Earth. Elena, no. I am not leaving you. Someone has to survive to tell people what happened here. Someone has to make sure this does not get buried like the Dawn's Promise. Vasquez gripped her friend's shoulders. Please, for my daughter. Make sure she knows I did not die for nothing. Torres stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. You are the bravest idiot I have ever known. I know. Now go. As Torres sprinted for the shuttle bay, Vasquez turned back to her remaining crew. 16 people, looking at her with expressions that ranged from terrified to determined. "I will not order any of you to stay," she said. "Anyone who wants to leave with Rachel, go now." No judgment. No one moved. David Okoye spoke for all of them. "We heard those voices too, Captain. If we leave now, we have to live with that. I would rather not." Vasquez felt tears threatening to fall. She forced them back. "Then let us give those people inside a chance." The horizon accelerated toward the station, the Vraxian warship close behind. At the last moment, Vasquez triggered the cargo release. 4,000 tons of mining explosives scattered across the station's hull dot, then she detonated them. The explosion ripped through the station's outer wall like tissue paper. Atmosphere vented into space. Emergency system screamed. And in the chaos, something unexpected happened. Prisoners began to escape, through breaches in the hull, through damaged airlocks, through any opening they could find. The captives of Research Station Prime made their desperate bid for freedom. Hundreds of them, species from across the galaxy. Running for their lives, the Vraxians were forced to choose. Pursue the horizon or contain their escaping subjects. They chose the subjects. The warship turned away from Vasquez's ship to begin capturing the fleeing prisoners. It was a mistake. The horizon was damaged, burning, barely functional. But it was still moving. And Elena Vasquez was still alive. "David," she said through gritted teeth, "send out a broad-spectrum signal. Tell anyone who can hear us that there are survivors in this system. Tell them to come. Tell them to bring everything they have. The message will take hours to reach anyone capable of helping, and we will buy them hours." She turned her crippled ship toward the Vraxian. Warship and charged. The horizon did not survive, but the message did. 14 hours later, the first human military vessels arrived at the coordinates Elena Vasquez had transmitted. They found the burning wreckage of a cargo ship, the damaged remains of a massive station, and 317 survivors floating in emergency pods, rescued by Vasquez's sacrifice. Among the survivors was Dr. Maria Santos, who had been a prisoner for 11 years. She carried with her a data chip containing everything she had managed to steal from Vraxian systems. Research records, experiment logs, communications with Accord member species who had traded, their own citizens for scientific data, the evidence of an high atrocity that had been hidden for nearly half a century. Admiral Victor Holt reviewed the data aboard his flagship. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he opened a channel to Earth. "This is Admiral Holt. I am requesting immediate authorization for military action against the Vraxian Collective. The evidence I am transmitting will explain why." He paused. "Captain Elena Vasquez gave her life to expose this. We owe it to her to finish what she started. On Earth, the United Government reviewed the evidence. They saw the faces of human colonists tortured for over a decade. They heard the screams of children from species they had never met. They read the communications proving that the galaxy's civilized order had been built on a foundation of hidden horror. The authorization came within the hour. Humanity went to War Dot, and somewhere in the void, floating among the wreckage of her ship, Captain Elena Vasquez's body drifted peacefully through the stars she had given everything to protect. She would never know the storm she had started, but the galaxy would never forget her name, the Galactic. Accord had maintained peace for 12,000 years through a simple principle that everyone understood. No single species could challenge the combined might of all others. War was mathematical suicide. Diplomacy was survival. The equation had held for longer than most civilizations could. Remember, humanity had not done the math dot within 72 hours of receiving Elena Vasquez's transmission. Every human military vessel in the galaxy changed course toward Vraxian space. 31 ships. The entire Earth defense fleet, against an empire that commanded 1,500 warships and had been perfecting the art of conquest for centuries. Karathi Military Academy would later use the opening campaign as a case study in tactical insanity. The Selvari Council of Logic declared it the most irrational strategic decision in recorded history. Admiral Victor Holt called it the only option. His flagship, the ESS Relentless, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Vraxian territory. Around him, the rest of the fleet emerged in perfect formation, a thin line of human vessels facing an empire that stretched across 40 star systems. Admiral, his tactical officer, Commander James Monji, spoke without looking up from his console. Long-range sensors are detecting a Vraxian response fleet. Approximately 200 ships. They will intercept us in 6 hours. Only 200? Holt's voice was calm. They are underestimating us. Sir, 200 ships against our 31 is not underestimating. It is overwhelming. By conventional standards, yes. Holt turned to face his bridge crew. But we are not fighting a conventional war. We are fighting to make a point. And the point is this: there is no safe way to torture children. There is no calculation that makes it acceptable. There is no force in this galaxy that will protect you from the consequences. He brought up a tactical display showing the Vraxian Empire in glowing red, with human positions marked in blue. We cannot win a war of attrition. They have more ships, more resources, more personnel. If we fight the way they expect, they will grind us down over years until nothing is left. Then what do we do? Wanji asked. We change the rules. We make every engagement so expensive that their numerical advantage becomes meaningless. We hit targets they believe are untouchable. We move faster than they can respond. And we make them understand that killing us will cost them everything. Holt began issuing orders. The fleet divided into 12 strike groups, each targeting different Vraxian installations across their territory. Military bases, research stations, supply depots, all hit simultaneously before the enemy could concentrate their forces. Sir, this goes against every principle of warfare, Wanji said quietly. Concentration of force is fundamental. Dividing a smaller force against a larger one is suicide by the textbook. But the textbook was not written by Deathworlders. The Admiral's eyes were cold. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predators, plagues, and ourselves. We learned something that most species in this galaxy never had to learn. When you are outnumbered and outgunned, you do not play by the rules. You break them. You make your enemies afraid. You become the thing they see in their nightmares. And if we fail, then we fail fighting for something that matters. That is more than the Vraxians can say. The strike groups launched. 12 human forces, averaging fewer than 3 ships each, scattered across Vraxian space like seeds of destruction. The Vraxians responded exactly as their doctrine demanded. They sent overwhelming forces to each engagement, confident that local superiority would result in quick victories. Against any other species, it would have worked. Against humans, it became a catastrophe. At the Vraxian Military Academy on Threx Prime, 3 human destroyers engaged a defense fleet of 27 ships. The humans were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and surrounded within the first hour. They did not surrender. The destroyer, Resolution, took 17 direct hits that should have killed her. Her captain, a woman named Diane Foster, sealed the damaged compartments with crew still inside and continued fighting. When her main weapons failed, she used her engines as weapons, ramming a Vraxian cruiser at full speed. The resulting explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 4 others. Her final transmission was heard across Vraxian command frequencies. You do not get to win. Not today. Not ever. Not while humans draw breath. At a Vraxian research station in the Outer Territories, a single human frigate faced 12 defenders. The frigate was destroyed within minutes. But before she died, she had released 200 autonomous weapons, platforms that continued fighting for another 3 hours. When Vraxian reinforcements finally silenced the last platform, they discovered that the research station had been evacuated during the battle. 400 prisoners, including 100 human colonists taken 15 years ago, had escaped in the chaos. The frigate's captain had known he could not win. He had fought anyway, buying time for people he would never meet. At the heart of Vraxian space, Admiral Holt led the main strike group against the Empire's primary shipyard. It was a suicide mission by any reasonable assessment. The shipyard was defended by over 100 vessels and enough firepower to destroy small planets. Holt attacked anyway. The battle lasted 18 hours. Human ships fought until their weapons melted, then rammed their enemies. Human crews continued operating damaged systems until the vacuum took them. Human commanders made decisions that prioritized enemy casualties over their own survival. The shipyard was destroyed. 40 Vraxian vessels were reduced to scattered atoms. And Admiral Holt's flagship, battered beyond recognition but still functional, limped away from the wreckage with a message for the Vraxian High Command. This is Admiral Victor Holt of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your shipyard is gone. Your research stations are burning. Your military academies are rubble. We have lost 19 ships and 8,000 humans in the last 3 days. You have lost 147 ships and infrastructure that will take you decades to rebuild. His voice carried no emotion. It did not need to. We can do this for years. We will do this for years. Every day, we will find something you value and destroy it. Every day, we will remind you that there is no safe place, no defense strong enough, no fleet large enough to protect you from what is coming. You have one chance to stop this. Surrender every prisoner in your research programs. Hand over every official involved in the torture operations. Accept whatever judgment the victims choose to impose. Or we will keep killing until one of us is gone. The choice is yours. The Vraxian response came within hours. It was not surrender, it was rage. The Vraxian collective mobilized everything they had. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. They were going to crush these primitive Deathworlders and make an example that the galaxy would never forget. 1,000 Vraxian warships converged on the remaining human. Fleet. Admiral Holt received the intelligence. Report without surprise. How long until they reach us? 48 hours, sir. Good. That is enough time. Mwanji stared at him. Enough time for what? Sir, we have 12 functioning ships left. They are sending 1,000. This is not a battle. This is an execution. It would be, if we were planning to be here when they arrive. Holt pulled up a star chart showing Vraxian territory. Most of their fleet had been pulled from defensive positions to join the assault force. Military installations across their empire were now virtually unguarded. They want to crush us with overwhelming force. They are concentrating everything they have on a single point, which means everything else is vulnerable. We are going to run. We are going to make them chase us. And while they are chasing, we are going to destroy everything they left behind. Research stations, communication relays, supply depots, every piece of infrastructure that keeps their empire running. By the time they catch us, they will not have an empire left to defend. The remaining human fleet scattered again. 12 ships became 12 nightmares, appearing without warning at undefended targets. destroying everything they could reach, and vanishing before the main Vraxian force could respond. For 3 weeks, the Vraxians chased shadows. Every time they concentrated their forces, humans struck somewhere else. Every time they divided to cover more territory, human ships picked off the smaller groups. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. Humans should not have been able to do this. They were a young species, barely space-capable, with technology generations behind the major powers. They should have been swept aside like dust. Instead, they were tearing apart an empire. On the Accord Council worlds, debates raged about intervention. Some species demanded that the Council stop the human aggression before it spread. Others, quietly, wondered why they should save the Vraxians from the consequences of their own atrocities. And among the species who had lost citizens to Vraxian research stations, a different emotion was growing. Hope. For the first time in decades, someone was fighting back. Someone was making the monsters pay. By the end of the first month, the Vraxian collective had lost over 400 ships. Human losses were significant, but sustainable. The Deathworlders showed no signs of stopping. The Vraxian High Council convened in emergency session. For the first time in their history, they considered an option that had always seemed impossible. We could negotiate, the youngest council member suggested hesitantly. Negotiate with primitives? With creatures from a poison world? We are the Vraxian collective. We do not bow to lesser species. Then we will die as the Vraxian collective. The humans do not tire. They do not fear. They do not stop. If we continue this war, they will destroy us. Then let them try. We still have 1,000 ships. We have 1,000 ships chasing 12 human vessels. Meanwhile, our infrastructure burns. Our production facilities are gone. Our research programs have been abandoned. In 6 months, we will have 1,000 ships with nowhere to refuel and nothing to defend. The council chamber fell silent. The truth was unavoidable. The humans were not trying to win a conventional war. They were trying to make the Vraxians pay such a high price that victory became meaningless, and they were succeeding. The High Arbiter of the Vraxian collective made a decision that would echo through galactic history. He opened a channel to the Accord Council and requested emergency mediation. We wish to negotiate terms with the human aggressors, he announced. We are prepared to discuss the release of research subjects and the cessation of certain programs. In exchange, we require guarantees of territorial integrity and cessation of human military operations. The message was relayed to Admiral Holt. His response was brief. No, the arbiters. Voice crackled with barely contained fury. What do you mean, no? We are offering peace. You are offering a pause. You want us to stop while you rebuild. You want to keep some of your torture programs running under different names. You want to escape consequences. Then what do you want? Holt's voice was ice. Everything. Every prisoner released. Every research station dismantled. Every official involved in the programs surrendered for trial. Every record of every atrocity made public. Complete and unconditional surrender. That is impossible. Our government would fall. Our society would collapse. Then it collapses. We do not care about your government or your society. We care about the children you tortured. We care about the families you destroyed. We care about making sure no one ever does what you did again. This is unreasonable. This is justice. You had 47 years to be reasonable. You used them to expand your torture operations. Now you face the consequences. The channel closed. The war continued. And somewhere in the burning wreckage of their empire, the Vraxians began to understand something that would haunt their species for generations. They had not been fighting humans. They had been fighting Deathworlders. Deathworlders did not stop until the job was done. Vraxian. Prime was beautiful in ways that made. The heartache, 3 silver moons orbited a world of far. Crystalline towers and seas that glowed with bioluminescence. Gardens floated above the cities, tended by machines that had been perfecting their art for millennia. The Vraxian species had evolved in paradise, their intelligence flowering in an environment so gentle that conflict had been almost unknown. Now, their paradise was surrounded by the burning wreckage of their fleet. Admiral Victor Holt stood on the bridge of the ESS Relentless, looking down at the world he had been ordered to conquer. His ship was battered, scarred by 3 months of continuous combat. Around him, the remnants of the human fleet held formation. 12 vessels that had once been 31, facing the final stronghold of an empire. Admiral. Commander Mongi's voice was hoarse from exhaustion. Planetary defenses are down. The last orbital stations have surrendered. The Vraxian home fleet has been destroyed. Civilian casualties? Minimal. We targeted military installations only. The cities are untouched. Holt nodded slowly. Whatever else happened, whatever judgment history might render, he had kept that promise to himself. He would not become the monster he had come to destroy. A communication request flashed on his console. The Vraxian High Arbiter, requesting to speak. Put him through. The view screen filled with the image of a being that had once commanded an empire. The High Arbiter's crystalline form flickered with colors Holt had learned to recognize as desperation. Admiral Holt, your forces have proven ... more capable than we anticipated. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. There are no terms. There is only unconditional surrender. Surely we can reach some accommodation. The research programs will be ended. The surviving subjects will be released. But the officials you demand, they are essential to our government. Without them, your government will have to rebuild with people who did not torture children for profit. That sounds like an improvement. The Arbiter's form pulsed with agitation. You cannot expect us to simply hand over our leaders. They will face execution. They will ... They will face trial. Before a court composed of species they victimized. Whatever sentence is imposed will be decided by those who suffered, not by those who inflicted suffering. This is revenge. This is justice. There is a difference, though I do not expect you to understand it. The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, his form dimmed to near darkness. We accept your terms. We surrender unconditionally. The Vraxian collective submits to whatever judgment you impose. Holt felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only the weight of 3M. Ounce of death, and the knowledge that the hardest part was yet to come. Ground forces will begin landing within the hour. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Any attempt to destroy evidence will be treated as a war crime. Any official who attempts to flee will be hunted to the ends of the galaxy. We understand. Good. Halt out. He closed the channel and turned to face his bridge crew. They looked as tired as he felt, worn down by a war that should have killed them 100 times over. Commander Mwangi, begin ground operations. Standard liberation protocols. Secure all research facilities. Arrest everyone on our list. And ... He paused. Try to remember that most of the people on that planet are not monsters. They are ordinary beings who lived under a government that did monstrous things. Treat them accordingly. Yes, sir. The landing craft launched from 12 human ships, carrying soldiers who had fought across the galaxy to reach this moment. They landed on a world of breathtaking beauty and found horrors that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Adeyemi led the first team into Research Station Central, the heart of the Vraxian torture program. She was 32 years old, a career soldier who thought she had seen everything the universe could offer. She was wrong. The station was immense, stretching kilometers underground into chambers that had been excavated over centuries. Each level held different categories of victims, species sorted by biological type, age groups separated for different experimental protocols, special containment for subjects who had been broken so completely they could no longer function. Ademi found the human wing on the 7th level. There were 87 survivors. Out of over 3,000 colonists who had been taken over 4 decades, 87 remained alive. Most could no longer speak. Some could no longer remember their own names. All of them bore scars that no medical technology could erase. One of them, a woman whose records identified her as Dr. Maria Santos, had retained enough of herself to keep fighting. She had organized the other survivors. She had stolen data whenever she could. She had kept hope alive in a place designed to destroy it. "You came," she whispered when Adeyemi entered her cell. "After all this time, you actually came." Adeyemi knelt beside her. "We came. We are here. And we are never leaving you again." Santos wept. It was the first time she had cried in 15 years. Across Vraxion Prime, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers found victims from 63 species, beings who had been tortured for decades, who had given up hope of rescue, who had learned to expect nothing from the universe but pain dot, and one by one. Those victims learned that someone had finally heard their screams. The trials began within a week. A temporary court was established on the largest Vraxian moon, with judges appointed from every species that had lost citizens to the research programs. Human legal experts worked alongside Korvathi warriors and Silvari, philosophers, to create a framework for justice that had no precedent in galactic history. The defendants were brought before this court in chains. High officials who had authorized the programs, scientists who had designed the experiments, guards who had implemented the torture, hundreds of individuals who had participated in decades of systematic atrocity. Admiral Holt was asked to testify about the military campaign. He recounted the battles, the losses, the decisions that had cost human lives. When asked if he had any regrets, his answer was simple. "I regret that we did not come sooner. I regret that Captain Elena Vasquez died before she could see this day. I regret the 8,000 humans who gave their lives because the galaxy's governments chose to look away from evil. But I do not regret a single shot fired in the defense of innocence. Not one. The verdicts came down over months. Some defendants were sentenced to death, others to life imprisonment. A few, those who could prove they had tried to resist from within, were given lighter sentences or released. The evidence was made public. Every record, every experiment log, every communication between Vraxian officials and their collaborators in other governments. The galaxy saw the full scope of what had been hidden for nearly half a century. The reaction was volcanic. On Korvathi Prime, crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding answers. How had their leaders known about the abductions? How many citizens had been sold? Who had approved the transactions? On the Silvari homeworld, the Council of Logic convened emergency sessions to review decades of diplomatic communications. They found evidence of complicity at the highest levels. 3 council members resigned in disgrace. 2 more were arrested. Across the galaxy, governments fell. Alliances shattered. The carefully maintained order of 12,000 years crumbled under the weight of a revealed truth dot, and at the center of the storm, humans stood unbowed. Admiral Holt was recalled to Earth for a ceremony he did not want. They called him a hero. They gave him medals. They named ships after him and the officers who had died under his command. He accepted it all with the same flat expression he had worn throughout the war. When reporters asked him how it felt to be humanity's greatest military commander, His answer made headlines. I am not a hero. I am a soldier who did his job. The heroes are the people who survived those research stations. The heroes are the crew of the Horizon who died to expose the truth. The heroes are the 8,000 men and women who followed me into impossible odds because they could not live with themselves if they did not try. He paused. I am just the one who lived long enough to see it. And on Vraxian Prime, the reconstruction began. Under human supervision, a new government was formed from citizens who had opposed the research programs, often at great personal cost. The planet's military capability was restricted. Its scientific programs were monitored. Its society began the long process of reckoning with what had been done in its name. Among the survivors, healing came slowly. Medical teams from across the galaxy worked to repair bodies that had been systematically damaged. Psychological support helped minds that had been deliberately broken. Some victims recovered enough to return to their home worlds. Others never would. Bright Sky, the Selvari child whose distress signal had started everything, was 9 years old when she was taken. She was 11 when she was rescued. She had spent a quarter of her life in darkness, learning that hope was a lie. A human doctor named Thomas Brennan was assigned to her case. He was a quiet man, patient, willing to sit with her for hours without demanding anything. He learned to speak her language. He learned what foods she liked. He learned that she had named herself in the darkness because no one else would. Why? She asked him one day, "Why did you come?" "Because someone heard you calling and they could not walk away." "But why?" "The others heard. They did not come." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know why they did not come. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they did not think they could help. Maybe they had forgotten that some things matter more than being safe." "Did you forget?" "No. Humans. We come from a world that tried very hard to kill us. We learned early that the universe does not care about us. It does not protect us. It does not reward good behavior or punish bad. The only thing that makes the universe better is when we make it better. When we stand up for each other. When we fight for people who cannot fight for themselves." Bright Sky considered this for a long time. "Will you stay?" "As long as you need." She reached out and took his hand. It was the first voluntary contact she had made with another being since her rescue. "I am glad you came," she whispered. Thomas felt tears threatening to fall. He did not fight them. So am I. The galaxy was changing. The old order was gone, shattered by the revelation of what it had hidden. In its place, something new was beginning to form. Something built not on convenient lies, but on uncomfortable truths. Humanity had not set out to reshape galactic civilization. They had simply refused to accept a civilization that tortured children, and that refusal had changed everything. But the trial was not over. The Galactic Council still had to render judgment on humanity's actions. And there were those who believed that whatever crimes the Vraxians had committed, the human response had been worse. The final battle was yet to come, and it would be fought not with weapons, but with words. The judgment chamber had never been so crowded, not every seat was filled. Every floating platform occupied. Species that had been absent from council proceedings for centuries had sent representatives to witness what would happen next. The air itself seemed thick with anticipation. Admiral Victor Holt stood on the central platform, flanked by 2 humans who had refused to let him face this alone. Commander Mwanji, who had served beside him through every battle. Lieutenant Commander Adeyemi, who had led the liberation of the research stations. They wore their dress uniforms, medals gleaming, standing at attention before the judgment of the Galaxy.High Arbiter Velos rose to address the assembly. The ancient being's crystalline form pulsed with colors that suggested deep conflict. Admiral Victor Holt of Earth, This council has deliberated for 37 days on the evidence presented. We have heard testimony from victims. We have reviewed military records. We have examined the documentation of Vraxian atrocities and the actions humanity took in response. The chamber was absolutely silent. We have reached our verdict. Holt did not move, did not blink. He had made peace with whatever came next long ago. On the charge of unauthorized military action, we find humanity guilty. Your species acted without consultation, without authorization, and without regard for established diplomatic protocols. A murmur rippled through the assembly. On the charge of destruction of sovereign territory, we find humanity guilty. You invaded and occupied space that belonged to a recognized member of the Galactic Accord. The murmur grew louder. Some delegates nodded in satisfaction. On the charge of genocide against the Vraxian collective, ... Velos paused. The silence stretched. Not guilty. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Some demanded explanation. Others cheered. Velos raised all 6 arms for silence. Gradually, order was restored. The definition of genocide requires intent to destroy a people because of who they are. Humanity did not attack the Vraxians because of their species. They attacked because of what the Vraxians did. The Vraxian civilization that tortured innocents for profit has been destroyed. The Vraxian people survive and are rebuilding under new leadership. This is not genocide. This is regime change through military force. However, the Arbiter's voice hardened. The manner in which humanity conducted this war remains deeply troubling. You gave no warning. You made no attempt at negotiation before the first shots were fired. You caused destruction on a scale that this galaxy has not seen in millennia. Holt finally spoke. May I respond? You may. We gave no warning, because warnings would have allowed the Vraxians to destroy evidence and murder witnesses. We made no attempt at negotiation, because 47 years of diplomatic protests had produced nothing. We caused destruction on this scale, because nothing less would have stopped an empire that believed itself untouchable. He turned to face the full assembly. But I do not stand here to defend our methods. I stand here to ask a question. Where were you? The chamber fell silent again. For 47 years, beings from your species were tortured in Vraxian laboratories. Your governments knew. Your intelligence services had the same information we found. Your leaders made the same calculations we made, measuring the cost of action against the cost of inaction. And they chose inaction. Every time. His voice rose. Where were you when children were screaming in the dark? Where were you when families were torn apart for the sake of scientific curiosity? Where were you when the signals went out, calling for help that never came? He pointed at a Korvathi delegate. Your people lost 1,700 citizens to Vraxian research. Your government sold them for mining rights. He pointed at a Silvari representative. Your council classified distress signals as navigational errors and told families their loved ones died in accidents. He pointed at the High Arbiter. Your predecessors built a system that prioritized stability over justice, that calculated the value of innocent lives against the inconvenience of confronting evil. You created a galaxy where monsters could operate openly because stopping them was too expensive. Holt lowered his hand. So yes, we violated your protocols. We broke your treaties. We acted without authorization. Because your protocols protected torturers. Because your treaties enabled atrocities. Because your authorization was never going to come, and children were dying while you deliberated. He stepped forward. Humanity does not apologize for what we did. We would do it again. And if there are other horrors hiding in the shadows of your civilized order, other species treating innocents as test subjects, while you look away, we will find them. We will stop them, with or without your permission. That is not a threat. It is a promise. The Deathworld species that you dismissed as primitives, the newcomers you expected to be grateful for a seat at your table. We will not sit quietly while evil flourishes. We were not built for silence. We were built for survival. And we learned long ago that the only way to survive is to fight. He straightened. So render your judgment. Condemn us if you must. Cast us out of your accord if that is your choice. But know this. Whatever you decide will not change who we are. Humans will continue to answer distress calls. Humans will continue to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Humans will continue to be exactly what we have always been. Deathworlders, survivors, and the people who come when no one else will. The chamber was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, a Korvathi warrior rose from his seat. The same warrior who had approached Holt after the first day of the trial. He walked to the floor of the chamber and turned to face the assembly. I have served my people for 40 years. I have defended the honor of the Korvathi Dominion in 100 battles. I believed that honor meant obedience, loyalty, following orders without question. His voice cracked. My daughter was taken by the Vraxians when she was 12. I was told she died in transport. I accepted the lie because questioning it would have meant questioning everything I believed about my people. The humans did not accept the lie. They questioned everything. They fought against impossible odds. They lost thousands of their own people to save beings they had never met from species they barely knew. He turned to face Holt. That is honor. That is what my people should have done. That is what I should have done. He drew his ceremonial blade and dropped to one knee before the human admiral. I offer my sword to the humans. Whatever they face, I will face beside them. Whatever they fight, I will fight with them. This is my oath. The chamber erupted in whispers. A Korvathi warrior swearing fealty to an alien species was unheard of. But he was not alone. A Salvari philosopher rose next. Then a Minari engineer. Then representatives of a dozen species who had lost citizens to Vraxian research. One by one, they walked to the floor of the chamber and offered their support to humanity. High. Arbiter Velos watched in astonishment as the foundation of galactic politics shifted before his eyes. The old order, built on careful balance and mutual suspicion, was crumbling. Something new was being born. Admiral Holt, the Arbiter said finally, it appears that this council's judgment is no longer the only one that matters. Holt looked at the beings gathered around him. Warriors, scholars, engineers, parents who had lost children. Species that had nothing in common except shared suffering and shared hope. I did not ask for this, he said quietly. You earned it, the Korvathi warrior replied, by being willing to do what the rest of us could not. Velos called for order. The assembly slowly returned to their seats, but the mood had fundamentally changed. What had been a trial was becoming something else. This council must make a decision, the Arbiter announced. Not just about humanity's actions, but about the future of galactic civilization. The evidence presented has revealed deep corruption in our systems. The response from our member species has revealed deep dissatisfaction with our leadership. I propose that instead of punishing humanity for exposing our failures, we learn from them. I propose the creation of a new framework for interstellar cooperation. One built not on the protection of established interests, but on the protection of innocent lives. The vote was not unanimous. Species whose governments had been complicit in Vraxian collaboration opposed the measure. They were outvoted by a margin of 3-1. The Galactic Accord, as it had existed for 12,000 years, was dissolved. In its place, a new organization was established, the Galactic Alliance. Its founding charter guaranteed fundamental rights to all sentient beings. It created courts with real power to prosecute crimes against sapient life. It established a rapid response force tasked with answering distress signals, regardless of political considerations. And at the heart of the new alliance, humans took their place. Not as newcomers to be tolerated, but as partners to be respected. Species that had once looked down on Earth as a poison world now looked to it for moral leadership. Admiral Holt watched the transformation with mixed emotions. He had not set out to reshape galactic civilization. He had simply refused to accept a civilization that tortured children. Commander Monji joined him at a viewport overlooking the ceremony below. "We actually did it," Monji said. "We changed everything." "No," Holt replied. "Elena Vasquez changed everything. We just finished what she started." He was quiet for a moment. "Make sure her name is remembered. In every history. On every memorial. She is the one who heard a child crying and could not walk away. Everything else followed from that." "I will, sir." On the surface below, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to sign the Alliance Charter. Humans stood beside Korvathi warriors and Selvari philosophers and dozens of other species, united by something that had never existed before, a shared commitment to protecting the innocent. Among the human delegation was a young woman named Bright Sky. She had been adopted by Dr. Thomas Brennan, the physician who had helped her heal. She was 12 years old now, old enough to choose her own path. She had chosen to be here, to watch the galaxy transform, to see the beings who had rescued her create something better than what came before. Thomas stood beside her, holding her hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. Bright Sky watched the ceremony below. Species that had ignored her cries for years were now pledging to never ignore another. The universe that had failed her was trying to become worthy of her survival. "I am learning to be okay," she said. "It takes time. Do you regret surviving?" She considered the question carefully. "I used to. When I was alone in the dark, I wished they had just let me die. It seemed easier than hoping for something that would never come." She squeezed his hand. "But then you came, and everything changed. So no, I do not regret surviving, because surviving gave me the chance to see this, to see the galaxy become better, to be part of something that matters." Thomas felt tears threatening. He did not fight them. "You matter," he said. "You always mattered. Even when no one was listening, you mattered. I know that now." She looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much, but still held hope. "Will you stay with me, while I learn how to live again? For as long as you need." She smiled. It was small and hesitant and broken in places, but it was real. "Then let us watch the new galaxy being born, together." They stood at the viewport as the ceremony concluded below. The Galactic Alliance was official. The old order was gone. The future was uncertain, but alive with possibility. And somewhere in the void, in the wreckage that had once been a torture station, a single signal still pulsed. The universal distress pattern, playing on a loop from a damaged transmitter. Was the signal that had started everything. The cry for help that humans had refused to ignore. It still played. A reminder of what had been, and a warning of what would happen. If it was ever ignored again, the galaxy had changed. Because Deathworlders heard an alien SOS. It would never forget, and neither would humanity.